Well, hello, free people of the Rocky Mountain region, and welcome to this Free State Colorado interview. Today, I'm joined by Erin Lee, a Colorado mom who stood up to protect her daughter from a predator protected by the public schools, and now executive director for Protect Kids Colorado, a group dedicated to standing up for children against the dangerous gender ideology movement. Well, Erin, I hope you are well, and thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Brandon.
Well, Colorado's Democratic majority in the state legislature has refused to protect kids and stand up for parents. So, your organization, Protect Kids Colorado, is taking the fight to the ballot box with a citizen led initiative to prevent irreversible sex change surgery on minors. Many people in Colorado aren't aware that this is happening in our state. So, Erin, for those who aren't aware, can you explain how Colorado is allowing this horrific minor sex change surgery?
Yeah, well, you mentioned the legislature. Since 2019, they've passed law after law that protects doctors who are breaking their oath to do no harm and mutilating the healthy body parts of children through chemical castration and surgical mutilation. We passed laws, for example, in 2023, they passed Senate Bill 188 through 190, which essentially established us as a sanctuary state. This was hidden within an abortion bill, but it made it so that basically if any doctor here in the state of Colorado is performing these procedures, they're untouchable. No subpoena can be responded to, no criminal action can be taken. The course of action for these detransitioners who realize they've been harmed is virtually gone at this point. They passed another bill this past session. So our lawmakers have worked very hard to establish Colorado as a state where these procedures are protected from every angle, and families are flocking here. Some people may have heard of the transcontinental pipeline that has popped up here. There's an organization here in Fort Collins called Rainbow Villages, and what they do is relocate families to Colorado from these states where these procedures have been banned. And 27 states have banned these irreversible sex change procedures on minors. Now, there's been executive orders, threats to Medicaid funding, and people may have seen that Los Angeles Children's Hospital, the largest provider in California, has even stopped these procedures. So anyone with a brain you would think would understand that we shouldn't be chopping off the healthy body parts of children. I think a lot of people bury their heads in the sand and say this isn't happening. But I want to direct people to the Stop the Harm database that Do No Harm put out. They found that just based off of public insurance information that doesn't include, TRICARE, self-pay, 14,000 kids had been mutilated in a 5-year period from 2019 to 2024. And so the evidence is right there. This is based off of public insurance information. And so it's easy for people to say it isn't happening, but it's been proven that it is happening. And, our Attorney General, Phil Weiser, even sued the Trump administration for the right for these hospitals in Colorado to continue mutilating kids. So it's absolutely a problem here.
Wow, that is absolutely horrific. And to see that Colorado's become kind of this, like, as you said, sanctuary state for this kind of horrific surgeries. I mean, it's so bad that California is not doing it, or that one medical provider there. But but hey, come to Colorado. I mean, it's outrageous. So
Yeah.
it's yeah, it's hard to comprehend, and I think a lot of people do bury their hands in the sand because it's so. I mean, it seems like it's something that's so new that hasn't been around for a long time, and it's just hit. Especially some of the older generation. They're like, "What? What are you talking about? This isn't happening," or "It's got to be so rare. It's got to be really." You know, minor compared to some of the bigger problems we face. I hear that sometimes, but how, in your estimations, how often is this happening here in Colorado?
Thousands of kids have been medically harmed here in Colorado. And I'll direct people to actually, there's a dad named Jason Zook, he's not on X like we are, but he went public at the Moms for Liberty National Forum, and talked about how his 7 and 9-year-old were taken away because he was not willing to put his 9-year-old on puberty blockers. And he's a teacher in Brighton. He's a leftist. I mean, he does not vote or align with you and I, but he just raised concern about his 9-year-old being put on puberty blockers. And for that, he lost 100% custody of both of his kids, who are now being medicalized here in Colorado. So there are families who've gone forward about the harm that's been caused to their kids. Another one, D-Trans Eden or Copy Who, that's on X, is a great dad to follow whose child is being medicalized against his will. So it's definitely happening here. It's a problem. And if people are familiar with Jamie Reed, the whistleblower out of St. Louis, who was one of the first, she's a lesbian, she's a Democrat. She used to help perform these procedures on kids. And then she learned how awful it was when she was getting calls from these kids saying, I want my breast back, Or, I've been on these puberty blockers, had intercourse for the first time, can't stop bleeding for days. And so she started to realize the medical harm that was being caused to these kids and that their mental health was not improved. The whole world's been bullied with what I call the suicide myth, that if you don't let these kids medicalize their bodies to affirm their perceived sex, the impossible sex, because you can't change your sex, it's impossible, it's in your DNA, that they will kill themselves. And the opposite is true. What she learned is that it's actually causing more mental harm to these kids to mutilate their bodies. And what she informed our legislature of this session when she flew out here to testify was that the doctors from her clinic, when it was shut down by the state of Missouri, they fled to Colorado, all of them, because we are this trans mutilation sanctuary state with so many protections for the doctors who are making money off of mutilating kids' bodies. So it's, I would say, in the thousands of kids here in Colorado who've been mutilated.
Wow. I mean, it's absolutely wild. It's horrible. Yeah, it's unimaginable. And I mean, it just common sense. Of course, you do these horrible surgeries to kids who are, I mean, they're in a temporary mindset. Kids grow up, they change their minds. They don't know what's best for themselves. Who does? I mean, even they talk about that with kids going to college and taking on all that debt, at 17, 18 years old. How can you be responsible enough to make that decision and say, yeah, load me up with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt? I think, I'm going to pursue this career path and then realizing, well, maybe my 18-year-old self wasn't the wisest one, to just make these decisions. And now you have people like 12 years old, 13 years old making these irreversible, life-changing decisions. I mean, common sense would dictate, yeah, of course they're going to have regrets. Of course they might change their mind, and now they can't do anything about it. I mean, it's tragedy.
Well, and I would refer anyone with doubt to the Colorado Medicaid website because right there on the Medicaid website, it suggests that we start these puberty blockers in kids as young as Tanner stage 2, which is age 8. So as soon as they're starting puberty. And as a mom who's been through this, my child was convinced to believe she was actually a boy. She was taught how to medicalize, how to get a gender affirming care letter, how to access puberty blockers, how to see an affirming therapist without my knowledge or consent. And then by the time I found out, I was bullied into going along with it. So all of a sudden, my child is trans. And then also the schools, the doctors, if you Google it, every resource says you must affirm, you must medicalize, or they'll commit suicide. And so I understand how so many parents have bought into this reluctantly. I think instinctually, Chloe Cole talks about this a lot, very famous detransitioner, that her parents were reluctant to sign off, but they were bullied with the suicide myth. And so the whole system is stacked against parents who dissent and kids who are questioning what's happening, and it's stacked in favor of making money off of harming these kids' bodies. And it's irreversible. Once you remove a child's breast, you cannot put them back. They'll never be able to breastfeed. I have a detransitioner friend. She goes by Detrans Aqua on X, who, she had her first child. She was able to conceive, thank God, that all these hormones didn't ruin her body entirely. But she feels pain where she wants to be able to feed her child. She has every day she feels this just, immeasurable pain in her body from where they removed her healthy body parts. And now she can't fulfill her function as a mother. And it's not reversible. I cannot stress that enough. And it is happening to thousands and thousands of kids in the state.
Wow. Wow. Well, I applaud you for standing up and fighting, for not giving up or running away like so many people want to out of Colorado, but actually having an organization now where people can help fight back. And so I want to pull up some slides that I put together here for the ballot measures, because that's really the best opportunity. That as we know, the state legislature is not going to do anything. They're part of this. The Democratic majority, unfortunately, buys into this hook, line, and sinker. But thankfully, here in Colorado, we have the right to petition. Now, folks, not every state has the petition rights that we do. So we're very thankful for that. And that's something that needs to be really recognized and fought for, because we just saw this in an attempt here in the 2025 legislative session. And they passed a bill to weaken our ability to petition onto the ballot. And it could have been much worse, but thankfully they toned it down a little bit. But it's something we really need to pay attention to and we really need to focus on here. So, Erin, this isn't the first year that you've been kind of leading the charge here with ballot measures. What did you learn from last year?
Well, when we're talking about not every state has the option. It's, I believe, 26 states who have this citizens ballot. It's usually Western states, not the original founding states, that have this process. So we're really lucky in Colorado, as oppressed by our government as we are. We do have the right. It's in Article 5, Section 1 of the Colorado Constitution. When they established the legislature, they established we the people's right to pass law. And as you said, in our legislature, we can't even get amendments through on the horrible bills like 1312 that went through, that was the arguably the worst bill of all time in Colorado. They threw a safety clause on that so that we couldn't even referendum it. They refused to pass any amendments that would, protect kids, protect parental rights. So this is the process we have, we the people. And, it can feel hopeless in Colorado. I understand that we lose a lot, but the people of Colorado do not align with our legislature. We've learned last year through this process and through the polling that we've done leading up to these measures that these are 80-20 issues protecting kids from irreversible harm and sex trafficking and protecting female spaces. Coloradans don't agree. And so this is the means by which we can all get involved. All people have to do is take a petition and just get some signatures from the people around you, and everyone can play a part in toppling the dominoes of these horrific laws that are being passed in Colorado. And I'll say what we learned last year, we had no money, we had no time. We were late to the game. We got sued into oblivion. We got challenged by One Colorado. We got challenged up to the Supreme Court. By the time we printed, we had about 80 days to get signatures. But in 80 days, all volunteer, we got about 80,000 signatures, which is quadruple what had ever been done on a volunteer basis, even with a full 6-month timeline. So what I've learned above all else is that Coloradans are ready to take advantage of this process. They are ready to protect kids by any means necessary. And I am fully confident that we are going to get on the ballot and win in 2026 on these issues.
Awesome. Yeah, looking forward to it. Looking forward to a good victory for parental rights, for the rights and liberty of just Coloradans in general. And this is the way to do it, folks. So, Erin, how many signatures do you need to get it on the ballot?
So we need about roughly 130,000 per issue. We're shooting for 200,000 each because they will invalidate up to 30%, Jenna Griswold's office. And so we really need about 200,000 per issue to get on the ballot, and that's for a 2026 ballot.
Wow. And then how much time, when does the signature collection process start? And then how much time do you have to get those signatures?
So the clock has actually already started ticking. We were pleasantly surprised that with Scott Gessler, former Secretary of State, as our legal counsel at the title board, we won all of the challenges. So they tried and they failed. Last year, we filed 20 initiatives. They killed 17 of them through legal challenge. This year, we only filed three and we made it through the process with all three. So the clock started on June 4th, which means signatures are due on December 4th for all three issues. I'm sorry, one of them's a little bit advanced, November 26th on the trafficking issue, and then December 4th on the other two. But we would really like to have all of the signatures in place by November, just so that we're ready to go. So it's going to be a 3 to 4 month push on the volunteer side.
Awesome. Well, let's jump in and look at some of the initiatives here. And folks, these have numbers on them, but just know that this is not the number that's going to be on your 2026 ballot. I'll definitely be revisiting that and putting out a ballot guide as we get closer. But currently in this part of the process, this is the number they're going by for reference at the Secretary of State and the state legislature. So a 71, prohibit certain surgeries on minors, protect children from irreversible sex change surgery act. So what will this do, Erin?
Pretty simple, just prohibits irreversibly harming children's bodies in order to change their biological sex, which again is impossible. So it, would not affect circumcisions or standard procedures that affirm a child's biological sex. It only pertains to procedures that aim to change a child's biological sex, and it's just 17 and younger. So, we believe in adults' freedom to make decisions. We are only gearing this towards children whose brains are not developed when they're being pushed into making these irreversible decisions. So we're just asking, let's wait until at least age 18 for kids to start chopping off body parts. And we did not include the puberty blockers this time around. I would have loved to have banned those as well. Our polling indicates Colorado doesn't understand the issue well enough yet. yet to guarantee that we would win at the ballot box. So we're starting with the surgical procedures. And then in the future, I hope to include either through the legislature when we win and take a majority back and can actually pass legislation, or via ballot measure to prohibit the puberty blockers as well. So this is just the surgeries.
Perfect. No, that makes sense. I'm going to read this here. This is the ballot title and submission clause from the title board. It says, "Shall there be a change to the Colorado revised statutes concerning surgery altering a minor's biological sex characteristics, and in connection therewith prohibiting any healthcare professional or other person from knowingly performing, prescribing, administering, or providing any surgery or related medical care on a minor for the purpose of altering the minor's biological sex characteristics and prohibiting state or federal funds, Medicaid reimbursement, or insurance coverage from being used to pay for the prohibited medical interventions." So yeah, I mean, seems pretty straightforward. I mean, if they're under 18, should they really be doing this? And I think, like you said, most people would vote for this, I do believe.
Yeah, we believe so as well. And I'll just point out that the title board sets that title language. It's not perfect. It's not exact. We don't believe it 100% reflects what the initiative does. So I would always encourage people to go to protectkidscolorado.org to or read the language itself. The ballot measures are pretty brief. We kept them pretty concise. I think the Secretary of State kind of tries to confuse the voters about what they're actually voting for with that language. To me, it's really straightforward. Shall there be a change to prohibit irreversible sex change surgeries on minors? It's that simple.
Yeah, here's the actual statutory change. I mean, it seems pretty straightforward as well. Yeah, prohibition on medical interventions on minors. No healthcare professional or other person may knowingly perform, prescribe, administer, or provide any surgery to a minor for the purpose of altering biological sex characteristics. So yeah, very straightforward, very clear, very clear cut. I think this should be a winning issue, and I really hope we see people volunteer their time, contribute some money, really try and get this on the ballot. And then, of course, once it's on the ballot, do everything possible to try and persuade voters to vote for this.
Yes, that's it. It really, again, as you said, when people say it feels hopeless and I don't know what I can do, it's as easy as sign up on protectkidscolorado.org. We'll get a petition in your hands. They're 40 signature lines each, and that's it. If everybody just does a little bit, this will get on the ballot and this will win.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, 100%. Now, there's an article there on, I believe, Colorado Politics that said this was related to a bill there was a bill that was presented this year from Representative Bradley that they kind of tied in a little bit, the Youth Health Protection Act. So I thought that was of course, just as an example, people, anytime a legislator tries to propose something like this, you can see those words there say postpone indefinitely. That's a very common phrase you're going to hear a lot down at the Capitol for any bill that's trying to protect kids, protect parental rights. So just wanted to put that up there so people could see, yeah, anything that's even close to this is not going anywhere down at the state capitol.
No, but God bless Brandy, Ken, Scott for trying. Those Bottoms, Bradley, and DeGraff have run really all of our ballot initiatives. They've run in, bill or concurrent resolution format. And as you said, they don't get anywhere. But I will say Ken and Brandy in particular, and Scott, all three of them were petition carriers last time around. Brandy was out on the streets of Denver speaking Spanish, getting getting signatures from people like literally just on the street doing the work. So kudos to them for being part of the ballot initiative process as well.
Oh, that's great. That's very inspiring. Yeah, people get involved. I mean, this is your opportunity to push back on this and make a huge impact. So there's a couple other measures here I would love to talk about. So yeah, so as you said, three potentially on the ballot next November in 2026, if there's enough grassroots support from volunteers, money, all of that. There's a lot of ifs out there, people, but it's really you watching this that can make a difference. So this one is 69 penalties for human trafficking of a minor. The Children Are Not for Sale Act. What can you tell us about this, Erin?
Again, very simple. This just sets a penalty of life in prison, no chance of parole if you buy or sell a child for sex in the state of Colorado. And one interesting thing we found through our polling groups, this polls at about 90% plus. They did not legally challenge this issue. This is not a right versus left issue. Children should not be sold into sex slavery, and it's something that happens way more often than people realize. Oftentimes, it's a stepfather who's inviting their child's friends over, or it's when you think of child trafficking, it's not just someone someone being brought over the border and, trafficked through the state. It's happening in our local communities on a grand scale. And so when we polled, we actually found people were more angry at the buyer than the seller. And a lot of people crossed out life in prison and put death penalty. So people are ready to protect kids from sex trafficking in Colorado. It's a common sense measure, something everyone can get behind. And it just makes sure that these people who buy and sell children for sex go to prison and never get a chance to harm another child.
Yeah, clear cut, straightforward. I mean, it's hard to believe that anybody be opposed to this. Any regular people at least. But yeah, I mean, here's some of the language there, folks. You can read that. I'll have all the links at Free State Colorado as always. But yeah, human trafficking, just upping that penalty because right now at the bottom you can see this is where the statute that would change. It says human trafficking of a minor for sexual servitude is currently a class two, so that's crossed out. It would be a class one felony if this passes, passes through the voters. The court shall sentence a person convicted of such a class one felony to the Department of Corrections for a term and then, yeah, life in prison without parole or release. I think that's, yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue with that. If anybody's engaging in sex trafficking of a child, then yeah, I mean, lock them away, throw away the key. I mean, I know people would love to see worse done to those people, but if you can see that crossed outline for people watching, it says at least the minimum of the presumptive range for a class two felony. So I know this was the major issue we're facing in Colorado is class two felony. Sometimes it's not that strict of a sentence. And so people who are engaging this currently, are really getting a slap on the wrist, relatively speaking, for how bad of a crime this is.
And Arizona actually just passed this exact same language last year, I believe, at the ballot. So that's where we lifted the language from. And the reason it pertains to protect kids is the age 14 is the average age that a person is sold into sex slavery. So it's primarily children. And also that, the transgender issue ties in. There are certainly children in our community. My child's groomer has trafficked children. My child was put on the classroom to trafficking pipeline where it's, confuse the child, vilify the parents, get the child out of the household. And we have missing kids just here in Larimer County, where it started with that secret gender and sex club in the classroom. So certainly the two are connected. Trafficking is a much larger issue than most people realize.
Wow. No, that's a great point. Yeah. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. Wow. Yeah. Frightening stuff there, people. And then just so people know as well, I mean, we go with Representative Bradley again. She tried to get this through the legislature, and that's why I said only normal people would have no problem with this. But some of our Democratic state lawmakers, they killed this bill. They postponed it indefinitely 2 years in a row. In 2024, House Bill 1092, the minimum sentence crimes against prostituted children, just giving people a minimum time in jail for it, making sure they actually did see a jail cell. And then just this year, 1073, protections against child rape. And yeah, this is just mandatory minimums for people in jail. And your ballot measure goes stronger than this, which is good. Which, if you're going to do a ballot measure, make it as strong as possible. I think that makes the most sense. And then that line down there from the Colorado Politics article just says Initiative 69 would increase human trafficking of a minor for sexual servitude from a class two felony to a class one felony with a sentence of life in prison without parole. And the initiative is backed by Teller County Deputy Sheriff Mark Geist. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Mark, he goes by Oz. He's also a Benghazi hero, if you remember the military operatives who rescued people during the Benghazi attack. So he's a brave man. He used to be in charge of child issues in Teller County as sheriff, and so he saw this firsthand, even in Teller County, which in my belief is like the safest. It's like the Mayberry of Colorado. This was a huge issue for him, even in Teller County. And so he knows intimately how this affects children, how it affects families, how it's happening in plain sight. And he jumped at the opportunity to be the face of this initiative.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, glad he's all the work he's done, and he's still not done fighting out there trying to protect kids. I mean, that's wonderful stuff. So, yeah, folks, the Democratic majority does not want to go through with doing this, so it's got to go to the ballot box, go to the people, and I think 100% a winning issue. Moving on to the third one here, protecting girls' single-sex sports and locker rooms. Now, I know there was a similar attempt last year to protect kids' sports. Can you talk a little bit about that? And then, is there any changes with this year's plan?
Yeah, we've narrowed the language a little bit. It actually was modeled once again after Brandy Bradley. The one that we ran last year was her language verbatim from a 2023 bill that she tried to run. We just narrowed the language a little bit, and we brought Jennifer Say in to be the chair of this issue because she is arguably leading the charge around the country for protecting female sports. Again, she's an atheist Jew Democrat. She's once again, she gets called all these horrible names like right wing. No, she just believes in protecting single sex spaces. She's got Riley Gaines on staff with her at XXXY. So Riley is behind this initiative again. And it's very simple. Just if you're a biological male, you don't belong in women's single sex spaces and sports. We do propose a third category so that no one is left out.
Yeah, and I think this issue is gaining some traction. We saw another county or another school district actually prohibit, boys from participating in school or girls sports just recently. So I think this is one of those issues that kind of took some time for people to really understand how big of a problem it was, and especially get on social media or just the coverage of it. And it's just such a horrible thing to see, these men or boys out, beating these girls at the sports, and how devastating that must be. So
I
really
feel
glad
for
to,
everyone
yeah.
involved. I feel for the boys who've been lied to into believing that they can become females. I feel bad for the girls who are being subjected to this, to the parents who don't know what to do about it. And it's just a really common sense, again, 90-10 issue that most people agree. Everyone deserves a chance to compete, but it needs to be fair, and women's spaces need to be protected.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Girls need to be protected from some of these men who are potentially doing this for the wrong reasons. But like you said, there's a lot of young men out there too who've been lied to and confused and tricked into thinking that this is an okay thing. And yeah, I mean, it's like one of those things that's been around for since the dawn of time, to have separate spaces for men and separate spaces for women, and give everybody their privacy and their ability to kind of just be themselves. And it's crazy how that's been upended in recent years. And so I think this is huge. I mean, this would help out a whole generation of young people and protect them so that they can actually be participating in their sports and doing what they need to do. So this is the statutory language here, really the big change. I mean, the whole thing would be a change, the explanation and all of that. But yeah, just really an interscholastic or intramural athletic team or sports sponsored by a school or athletic association that is designated for females, women, or girls shall not be open to a male student or participant. And then down below says the same thing, just reverse. And it's crazy to think that we're at this stage here in 2025, where in Colorado, where this needs to be spelled out. I mean, the most common sense type of thing that any grandparents and great grandparents would be like scratching their heads of like, why would this even be necessary? But here we are.
Well, Brandon, I have to point out while we were at title board, I mean, we were all one of my board members at Protect Kids leaned over and he was like, "This is like listening to a debate in Whoville," because the title board was discussing how Colorado voters would not understand male and female, especially as they're defined in this initiative, which is by their reproductive organs, which is we worked with doctors to make that definition, and it is the clearest way to define male and female is either they produce sperm or ova. Even if for those genetic anomalies like an XXY, they still only produce one or the other. And so it is the most clear-cut way to define male and female. But they debated for hours how they were trying to deny this title, and one of them voted against it because voters would not understand what male and female means. That's how
That is
crazy we've gotten in Colorado.
That is absolutely crazy, absolutely wild. Yeah, I mean, I don't even know what to say, but this is something that needs to happen. I think people would support it, and hopefully, these ballot measures can kind of turn the tide and give people uh, a sea change here in Colorado, because that's what we need. We need to stop enabling these groomers, these predators, these other people who want to just totally destroy families, and give kids a fighting chance to succeed in their lives without weird people, in my mind, getting involved and trying to confuse these poor kids.
Yeah, and I'll point out just too with this one, this would be precedent setting because you've seen all the other laws across the country like this that have been passed affecting Title IX. That only affects publicly funded institutions. Our initiative would hold all leagues accountable, and most people don't realize that about 80% of youth athletics are private league, Olympics, for example. And so ours would be the first law in the country to hold all youth athletic organizations accountable, not just publicly funded.
Oh, interesting. Very interesting there. So, people, you can get involved. So often I hear, people say, "Oh, people are just complaining about how bad things are here in Colorado. What can I do about it? Give me something to do." Well, this is your opportunity. I mean, you can start now. The clock is running, like Erin said. Just go to protectkidscolorado.org, sign up to volunteer. If you can't volunteer, maybe you can contribute. These things are very expensive. I mean, how much is this going to cost, would you say, Erin, if everything goes as planned by November of 2026? I mean, how much is this going to cost?
Well, it's $15,000 just to print the paper to get the petitions distributed, but it usually runs upwards of a couple of $1 million per issue to get on to guarantee you get onto the ballot. So donations are the number one thing that we need. Volunteers is number two. Anyone can sign up. You actually don't even have to be from Colorado to carry a petition. You just have to be from Colorado and registered to vote to sign it. So anyone who's here can carry a petition and get those 40 signatures and sign up at protectkidscolorado.org.
Wonderful. And they can carry all three petitions at once, right? If they're going to carry one, why not carry all three? When they're
Yep.
going around town, they can get signatures from the same voters on all three of them.
That's right. And it's really easy. And I'm not someone who likes to approach people. So for me, it was kind of awkward at first doing this, being a petition circulator, but it turned out to be really fun. And you meet people and you engage in interesting conversations. And last year we informed 80,000 people who didn't understand what was happening. So it's very much an information campaign, a conversation starter, and just a fun way to get involved.
It is really fun. I've done it before for reducing the income tax when the Independence Institute did that a couple years ago. And yeah, it's a great way to just to talk to people and explain things and build those conversations up. And yeah, it's so easy to do. I mean, really, just get the signatures, explain what's going on and keep going and see how many you can get. It's pretty fun and a great way to get involved.
And what better way than to take our state back by the process of we the people? This is us. This is our, it's not political. I've had churches say, "Oh, we don't get involved in politics." I'm like, it's not political. This is a moral issue. I'm not really registered either way. I'm kind of an unaffiliated politically homeless person. To me, this isn't political. These are moral issues. And what better way than to make change than all of us doing a little bit to take the state back?
Yeah, and I know I've mentioned the Democratic lawmakers down in Denver, but these are nonpartisan issues. These are issues that the most voters in Colorado who are unaffiliated, I think, would be interested in supporting. And yeah, if they get on the ballot, I think there's a very, very good chance they're going to pass.
Agree.
Perfect. Well, any final words, Erin? Any final thoughts there?
No, just thank you for having me. And, thank you to everyone who was involved last year and who's jumping back in this year. We're just Protect Kids Colorado. The beauty of it is that it's a We the People movement. No one's, I'm the executive director, but we're all in charge. This is something for everyone. And just appreciate everyone who's done their part.
Awesome. We'll look forward to talking to you again as it gets closer to the November 2026 election. I know it seems a long ways out there, folks, but it comes quick and there's this tight deadline to get these signatures collected. So please sign up today. And Erin, really appreciate all your work, appreciate your leadership, and keep up the good fight.
Thanks, Brandon.
All right, take care.